welcome to Top 5 Nintendo, where we give you top 5 lists for all things Nintendo. I will be your host today. I'm Sam, and my co-host here is Jake. Jake, how's it going?
Hello, Sam. We just watched the Eagles win the first game of the season. Woohoo, go Birds.
Go Birds. Well, today we will be discussing Legend of Zelda top 5 original soundtracks.
I'm so excited.
I'm very excited too. We took an odd approach for this episode, being that I'm the host and I'm the one with pretty few experiences with the Zelda franchise, whereas you have played most if not all the main games at this point.
Yeah, resident Zelda fan over here.
There we go.
I have maybe 4 or 5, I don't know, a handful of games left. And it's really just the tricky ones that not really. I've Seasons and whatever the other one
Oracles?
is. Oracles of Season and Oracle of Time. But I still have to do the Spirit Tracks. There you go.
Right.
And the other one that's on the Wii. Phantom Hourglass, but that's not on the Wii. It's the other one. Princess.
You got this. I'm cheering you on.
The wolf.
I'm not going to know it, so I'm not going to be able to help you.
Twilight Princess. There you go.
Oh, there we go. The wolf. I should have known. Okay, yeah, that's a main game for sure. And then the handheld ones, I guess you haven't really had an opportunity.
No,
yet.
I played most of them by now, either on my DS or on the Switch. There
you go. So basically, Jake knows what he's talking about, and I listened to
Minish Cap.
There we go.
Okay, yeah, I guess there's a good chunk of handhelds I haven't played.
Well, I still respect you.
Thanks.
My point that I'm really making here is that we are coming from two different perspectives on this, because our listeners might ask, well, how are you judging the soundtrack, Sam, if you've only played a handful of them? And I have just pulled them up on YouTube and straight listened to them. I don't know if we've said this before on our episodes, but we are both musicians.
It's true.
We make music and listen to music.
Yep.
So I love listening to full-length albums. That's how I spend most of my day, doing things productive, but in my earbuds, I am listening to just music pretty much all day. And so I just threw on pretty much all of the Legend of Zelda soundtracks.
Can I ask a question?
Oh, please do.
Did you listen on Spotify?
No.
YouTube?
Okay,
thank God.
Yes.
Okay, I guess, you probably know this from searching, but Spotify does not actually have the original soundtracks.
Right.
So I got scared for a second. So right. If you're listening to some poser, Zelda music, that would have been upsetting.
So this is good because we're able to provide a lot of context about maybe the soundtracks.
Yep.
And I can start with Koji Kondo. He is pretty much the mastermind behind the music that you hear in pretty much all the Zelda games. I mean, he wrote the theme.
More or less.
Yep. And he pretty much orchestrated, composed all of that, all the music that you hear and and love.
Yes. I think up until Skyward Sword, he did mostly everything himself. But I think after that, he got a good chunk of help from a lot of people. Because we discussed this a little bit ago, but some of these soundtracks go to 6 or 8 hours.
Yeah, totally. I mean, he's able to compose that stuff the early games. I mean, when it's really just 16-bit or chiptune, very MIDI sounding things. One person can do that. And then when you get to the really orchestral stuff, it's a lot. A lot of other hands are involved, but it can all be basically traced back to Koji Kondo.
Yeah. Yeah, the Zelda franchise's music really doesn't do a whole lot of new things, I guess. It does, but it all has its roots in the original games.
Right. You can trace it all back. It executes the ideas in new ways.
Definitely.
As the games progress. But yeah. So I thought that was cool. Getting even more familiar with him as an artist.
Yeah.
He didn't just do Legend of Zelda. He does most of the Mario games too, I believe. And I didn't get to give too much of that a listen. I wish I did, just so I could see what he did particularly different for Legend of Zelda.
Yeah. I got you.
Yeah. I don't know how. There we go. Hopefully
That's it. That's all you need.
hopefully, yeah, we don't get taken
I
down
got
from
you.
that
Oh,
little
no.
recital.
Oh, I hope not.
Yeah. But what about you, Jake? Have you gone out of your way to listen
To listen to other works?
Yeah. Outside
no,
of the Zelda
I mean,
franchise.
I've played some Mario games, but not for this episode. I didn't go out of my way to listen to his other
Sure.
works. I mean, I want to say to the fans directly, I encourage Sam not to do this episode exactly because it is so much music.
It is a lot. And my response was, I have time to listen to the music. I mean, I'm not going to have time to play all these games by the end of this season.
Yep.
But I really wanted to listen to all that music. And then, because I have a lot to say about music, and I feel like I could possibly have some valid contributions to the discussion.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, actually, you're hosting, but
I am indeed
if
hosting.
you want to get into it.
We can hop right into it.
Okay.
So for my number 5 pick, I chose Ocarina of Time.
Number 5, come on.
Number 5. And I know that's a bit of a hot take, and I'm sure in the future that could change. I'm sure once I
hope
play
so.
the full game,
Yep.
maybe play some of the songs
Absolutely.
on my own Ocarina, right? I would have a
Are
different
you
relationship.
buying an Ocarina?
Possibly after I play the
I
game.
hope
If it's good enough, I would hope so
I've
too.
been so close to buying an Ocarina so many times.
Because
I
of
just
the game.
I just never actually bought it.
I'm sure it can't be too difficult to learn.
It's been in my Amazon cart so many times. Just never clicked that buy now
Well,
button.
I have a good idea for a birthday gift now.
Uh-oh.
There we go. I know.
Hey.
Ooh. But I get why it's a hot take, because this is possibly the most well-known Legend of Zelda original soundtrack, I would say.
Well, I mean, I would think the original one is. I mean, everybody knows.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I would say, okay, you're talking about like the first with like the little chiptune theme. Okay. I would say as like a published listen, like a published full-length album style,
Yeah.
I think I've seen more people seek out Ocarina of Time
Okay, maybe.
as a
But I mean,
collection.
that might just because I think that would be because of the popularity of the game.
Okay.
But I think okay, whatever. I mean, I don't want to argue about it. You're probably right.
Here's what I'll say is that it was for the Nintendo 64.
Yeah.
There's like
A greater audience.
okay, there's a greater audience, and there's also a greater technological leap, right? From
Okay,
the Super
sure.
Nintendo and the Game Boy to
I see what you mean.
3D, and it was able to process. I'm assuming it was able to process a lot more
sound.
right? And I love the music that was like from A Link to the Past and from the NES games. But you can clearly tell that there's a limitation. It perfects the execution to that limitation. But then once you enter the Nintendo 64 era, these songs start sounding like real songs. Like,
Okay,
not
fair
to
enough.
call the other songs not real songs, but now it sounds like kind of like more orchestrated, more like a lot of different parts contributing to creating a greater song. And that was cool. I kind of preferred like the jingles or like the more theme driven music from, I don't want to spoil anything, but maybe from the earlier games.
What do you mean by that? Like, what would you be spoiling?
I don't want to spoil anything from my list.
Oh, okay.
Like
Okay,
maybe I might have A Link to the Past
I got you.
higher.
Yeah, okay.
That
That's kind of a given.
yeah, and I found that kind of like more catchy and more fun to listen to.
Mhm.
Now that's not to say that these aren't poorly written. They weren't really super clicking with me, although I was really impressed by what they did with their limitations and how they progressed. Just the score of the game.
Mhm.
And like I said, when I play the game, maybe have more like emotional connection to it. Like maybe when I play the songs on the ocarina or when I explore the dungeons or the bosses.
Absolutely.
Maybe I will see it from a different perspective. Maybe remember like the anxiety I felt when things get really tense and the peacefulness of the fields. As for right now, it's going to be number 5 on my list, which isn't too bad because there's a lot of scores, for Legend of Zelda.
It's pretty bad, but okay.
That's okay. Well, who's to say?
Okay, I want to say real quick, I just remembered we totally are allowed to hum these and we're actually allowed to play the songs because we're commentating on them.
Okay, well,
So,
hum to your heart's content then, Jake.
so we will not be in trouble for that. And then I was going to say pretty much exactly what you just said. I think this is so low for you because you haven't played the game. And I think if you had the visual experiences alongside these audio experiences, they will trigger memories forever. That would make this higher on your list.
Very possible.
I think so. I mean, the Zelda franchise is very music centric. Like, it always has things associated with music as part of the actual game. And Ocarina of Time really like pushes that. So I think you really would grow much more connected to that soundtrack if you played it.
So you make a great point, and I also want to add to that. I had that in my notes and I forgot to bring it up. I was wondering if being able to be like a musician in the game, maybe did they get that idea because the Nintendo 64, it's the first Nintendo 64 Legend of Zelda game. Maybe they made that decision because now they finally had the ability to, and maybe it was always kind of like a music driven game, like the theme was well known, and it's like, oh, now you can like play the music. Like that might have been a little too hard to pull off in like A Link to the Past.
Okay. Yeah, that is possible, although there is a flute in the first game, and A Link to the Past I think also has a flute or some other instrument. So instruments were always part of the game.
Okay, they're always
but Ocarina of Time really made it part, like the game essentially.
It's
like
in the title.
It was like the main part of the game.
Right.
Instead of just like a side object you pick up. Like, I mean, but to be fair, also there's not a boomerang game,
Yeah.
Even though, so I mean, music is very essential to the franchise, is what I'm getting at, I guess.
And that's why this is such a great episode idea, at least.
Totally. Well, if that's all you have to say.
That's all I have. What's your number 5?
My number 5, Skyward Sword. I just played it, the remaster on my Switch. Beautiful game. Even more beautiful soundtrack. This was the first fully orchestrated Zelda soundtrack, and they did that because they were going into the game and they realized, or maybe they knew, it was the 25th anniversary, so they wanted to make a really big spectacle of it. And they decided, well, what could be bigger than an actual full orchestra making the soundtrack for this game? And I will put in a little asterisk. The game isn't fully orchestrated. There is still like electronic instruments, but there is a full orchestra working the music for the game.
Sure.
Which I was a little confused about at first, because some of the tracks definitely have like drum machines, which is like not an orchestra, but it feels, the orchestra, like having a live orchestra makes it feel like all the more like fantastical, which like, so it is obviously a fantasy game. So, I mean, having these like, especially the string instruments and the little like flutes chiming here and there, like really give like a fantasy feel that the electronic instruments of previous games like wouldn't really give you that feel, opposed to like any other like 8-bit or 16-bit game of the time. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard to like portray those different I don't know. I don't really know how I describe it. It just feels that way. Like it's more fantasy. You know what I mean? There's like okay, so I talked a little bit about individual tracks, but I tried not to too much.
Okay.
But for all of them on my list, I think all of them, I picked a couple tracks I really liked. So there's like an arpeggiated like file select track. We're not playing this music live, but I hope we're able to edit this in afterwards. So it's like, I mean, I don't really know how else to describe it. It's just arpeggiated like string instruments, and I just really dug that track. And yeah, now I really wish we set this up better to play it live. But yeah, hopefully when you're listening, it's playing right now. The Skyloft theme. The Skyloft is the main area you start the game in. The theme is like very happy and joyous and like comfortable, and it's a really good. You come back to Skyloft a lot in the game, like between each whatever dungeon or whatever. So it's a really nice like homey feeling, and it's really cool that like music could create that feeling. I mean, obviously it's not only the music creating that, but it's a huge contributing factor. So I think this game really does a good job of creating emotions out of the music. I will say it is Oh, okay. Also, another track I like. This is the last one I'll talk about specifically, but Groose is this guy in the game who's kind of like a foil to Link. Like he's not exactly an antagonist, but he kind of is. He has a huge like development, like side story, which is like really hilarious and not common in Zelda games, I guess. But his theme is a masterpiece. Cue theme right now for editing these in. But I want to say, so Fee is essentially this character that follows you around that is like a spirit that helps you along your journey. And any song with Fee in it, in my opinion, is so cringe. And that's why it's so on my list. Like, these songs were like hard to listen to, I want to say.
Wow.
And
it's
then
this is number 5 for you, right?
yeah.
Okay, so it still made the list.
Yeah, no, it's still beautiful.
Okay.
I just really just like these Fee things.
Oh, gotcha.
Or maybe it's Fi. I don't even know how to say it.
No, I wouldn't either.
But I'm gonna say Fee. And not only were these tracks let's say annoying, but Fee like did this horrendous like ice skating dance along to each, not wearing ice skates or anything, just like flying around like like it was so cringe every time. Besides that, Zelda's Lullaby is a recurring song in the Zelda games, and it is beautifully done with this orchestra. I said I wouldn't talk about individual tracks, my bad. Okay, and then my last thing about this is the orchestra. Having the full orchestra obviously makes it feel a lot fuller and bigger than the other previous games, and that really impacted like specific achievements in the game. Like when you finished like you have to find these 3 like flames at one point, so when you find the flame, it has this really like grandiose music, like orchestrated music, and it feels like so much more fulfilling when you have like this music telling you how important this moment is, essentially. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like you just feel that much more fulfilled.
Some sound cues.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I think the music really played into this game. It was beautifully orchestrated, and Fee's annoying, and that's what I got.
Well, orchestrated is definitely the word for that soundtrack. I have a friend who says that this is the best Legend of Zelda soundtrack, and I think it's because of that. I think it's because of how it is orchestrated. Feels more like cinematic classical music, and that's the difference of this soundtrack that is clearly visible aside from the other ones. Like this one stands out as its own, for better or for worse, and it kind of made me not click with it super well. I felt like it was very different from different. Yeah, maybe too different. And what I like about the Zelda scores is that they are all doing similar ideas and executing them differently, and it kind of reflects maybe like the console, the era that it came from, and it's cool to see that development and see it played out different ways. And I felt like this one, probably because Skyward Sword is just a different kind of Zelda game in general, they were maybe more willing to take risks with the sound cues and the score. So maybe I'll play the game and like the score in that context, but outside of the game, it wasn't gripping me very hard.
Okay. I mean, you could borrow the game if you want.
That's very kind of you,
I never offered, but
you didn't.
You could borrow any game I'm not playing, really.
Let the record show that Jake is a very kind man.
I try. Yeah, I don't know. I see what you're saying, but because this game was like the origin story essentially of Zelda, and it takes place in the clouds half the time, I feel like this orchestrated soundtrack really pushes the fantasy element. Like I want to really highlight that. I think it does a really good job of feeling like a fantasy game, which some of the other Zelda games I would definitely describe more as an adventure or action game than a fantasy game. But this one really feels like a fantasy game. And I think the music is a large contributing factor
fantastical.
to that. Yes. Okay. That's all I have.
Okay, that's fair.
So number 4.
Number 4 for me is Twilight Princess HD.
Okay.
So I'd like to make a quick distinction, and also a little bit of a fun fact. So the original Twilight Princess score was published by Koji Kondo as an 18-minute EP.
Okay.
Now, there's more than Well, I haven't played the full game, but I assume there's more than 18 minutes of original soundtrack on it.
Probably.
But yeah, so no one can really agree on like what is the real soundtrack for it, for the original. I don't know what your research showed, but that was kind of what was on my end. You could listen to the published EP. It's kind of short. Or you can listen to like 6 hours of all the music.
Yeah, so
that is on Twilight Princess.
So when I was doing this episode, I listened to the full OSTs, which I guess is original soundtracks, or I believe that's what it says.
Original soundtrack. Okay, right. And sometimes it gets tricky because Koji Kondo may officially publish an original soundtrack and choose to publish it as maybe 2 hours. Sometimes you might choose to publish it as 50 minutes, and maybe there's a collective longer length that you might be able to find. Not that it really matters too much.
I don't know if Nintendo or Kondo themselves release these, or if it's more of a fan-made thing on YouTube. Like, I know Skyward Sword, I think had a vinyl release because it had the whole orchestra tour, if you know what I'm talking about. But I don't think any soundtrack was really like officially released. Like, I think these might be more fan-made things where they literally like found the tracks in the games and recorded them and put them on YouTube. I don't know.
My guess would be there are definitely some videos on YouTube that are that case, but I believe
Nintendo actually publishes these?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right.
I'm just saying that because they're not on like Spotify or Apple Music or anything. So
sure.
I feel like if Nintendo put them on YouTube, why wouldn't they have just put whatever? I mean, I don't know the answer to that. We don't have to debate it.
Those of you who are listening to the episode, if you have the complete truthful answer, let us know. But nonetheless, there was a less than agreeable length with the original soundtrack. Yeah. And I thought it was fine. What I've heard of it was fine. That's not the point. I picked the HD one.
Cool.
And it was really good. It was very orchestral.
Nice.
Similar vein to Skyward Sword.
Yep.
And more serious.
Definitely.
Less like maybe like melodically cheery or whatever. Something that we would see in like a Majora's Mask soundtrack.
Some would say.
And I think that reflects the tone of the game. Like I said earlier, I haven't played through all of Twilight Princess.
Oh, you did play some of it?
I did play some of it.
Cool.
Yeah. When it came out for the Wii, so not even the HD one.
Okay.
But it was great. And I do like... I'm a big fan of cinematic classical in movies, right? And I like that approach in video games too. I like the 16-bit and the chiptune, like I said earlier. But I do like when it's orchestral and done right. I just felt like Skyward Sword maybe was a little bit further from what I was familiar with for Legend of Zelda, and Twilight Princess kind of did that orchestral approach, but maybe stayed closer to reeled it in, stayed closer to the familiar, and that's what landed me on the HD version.
Okay, cool. So was the HD version different? I know you're saying you had this EP, and then like was the HD version actually remastered, or was it? Because I know like with Link's Awakening, they actually like redid the whole soundtrack.
Right.
So was that the case here, or was it? Or maybe you don't know.
Yeah. No, that's a great question, and I don't really have a perfect answer on like the differences, whether it's like completely redone sound or like remastered music or reimagined. The Link's Awakening remake soundtrack is like just different from the original Link's Awakening. Like those are two different soundtracks, in my opinion.
Yeah, Kondo wanted to make sure that this team like kept true to the original as much as possible, but they really like essentially redid there's no instruments really that were reused, so it was, I guess, it is different, but they tried to keep true at least.
Sure. And I think those are both good soundtracks. I won't say if they made my list or not.
Same, although I will say I do like the remastered one better.
And that's valid. I was more interested by the first one. I listened to the first Link's Awakening, so I played a little bit of that on the Game Boy when I was much younger.
Cool.
And then I re-listened to it now, and it's a surreal listen. Like it feels like experimental, like I would picture like a noise rap group using that soundtrack and rapping over it, and it'd be kind of like a dizzying experience, which makes sense in the game's context because the game is kind of dream-like and it almost like narratively experimental.
Yeah.
But that's not my number 4 pick. Twilight Princess HD. That's all I got.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I haven't played this one, as I said, so it didn't connect with me as much. Perhaps I didn't spend as much time listening to the soundtrack per se than the other ones. But yeah, I would draw similarities as well between Majora's Mask and this one. I think more so than you could draw between this and Skyward Sword. Mm-hmm. Because of that more dark feeling, and it would be cool to. I did like the soundtrack. It just really like I said, these are so long, and having not played the game, I don't feel an emotional connection to it. But it would be cool to see this style taken even further with the new Breath of the Wild, which I am hoping is a dark take, like is a more darker Zelda game. But we'll see how it goes. And that's really what I have.
So what is your number 4 pick?
My number 4 is The Legend of Zelda on the NES. That is it.
Number 1. The number 1 Legend of Zelda game.
The first game.
The first one.
The first game that came out, yes. Koji Kondo did what he had to do. He put it away. He had a job and he did it. I don't know if I told this story on this podcast, but essentially they had a song picked for this game that, according to copyright law, would have been in public domain, I think like 3 months after, or even less, like a month after this game came out. So they originally intended to use a song, and I think the copyright law is like it's public domain like 90 years after the original composer dies. So they were like a month off. So pretty much this game's already done. It's like it's already marketed. It's about to hit shelves, and they're like, wait, we need a main theme song. So Koji Kondo, like within like a week, made the Zelda theme song. Pretty wild that he did that so quickly. Although it's obviously not as complicated as the soundtracks in the newer games. It is just the like 8-bit and like the electronic instruments or whatever. But very impressive. It doesn't have a lot of music. I think it's like a half hour, 45 minutes total. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It reuses the same music pretty much the whole game. I think every dungeon is the same except maybe the last one. The whole like overworld is like one song the whole time. There's like a fairy. When you go in the fairy fountain, there's a track, and maybe when like you pick up an item or something, there's really not much. It's bare bones, but it stays in your head forever. Like after I played this game, I was like humming Zelda everywhere I went. Like you just can't get it out of your head, or I couldn't at least. There's again, it's short, it's bare bones. There's not a ton to say. I love, like how I said a little earlier, like the Zelda franchise draws from its roots. Like it's not making new soundtracks and themes every game. And like obviously this game specifically, the first game, is pretty much like appears in one way or another in every game after it. Mm-hmm. So it kind of just had to be on the list for me.
Yeah, that's valid. I had a great time listening to the first Legend of Zelda soundtrack. And this one I've also played a little bit of, and I think you kind of nailed it. He did what he had to do. There was plenty of limitations with how you could, play sound on the original Nintendo. And he made it work really well because it's super catchy. Mm-hmm. The songs are pretty distinct from each other, and they give you different vibes. It's much shorter. I'm sure you couldn't fit as much music on an NES game.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. So you had to be creative, and unfortunately it did not make my list. Probably because this score walked so that all the other ones could run. Right.
Okay, fair enough.
I would like to honorably mention this and Legend of Zelda 2 to be good and on the same tier of each other.
Okay.
And I would have loved to put it at maybe a 6.
Okay. I also wanted to say, so Koji Kondo was coming right off of Mario, essentially, with this one. So this was like a very big change in the music he was making at the time, which like I guess made it all like, I don't know. It's really hard to put it towards how impressive this guy's career is. You know, to literally make the Mario soundtrack and then go turn around and make the Zelda like the first ones, pretty crazy. Had pretty much nothing to base it on at the time. There weren't really games like this. I mean, there were like fantasy games, but it wasn't a lot to take from. So Koji Kondo is really on a whole another level, and I'm sure we'll be saying that a lot this episode.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, this episode's like about him. Like we're only this is like his work. That's fair. Was that all you got to say?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's pretty short. Either like it or you don't, I would say.
I guess so.
Yeah.
I would be pretty upset if somebody told me they didn't like it.
I probably wouldn't like them as much. Well, in that case I can go on to my number 3 pick.
Yeah, do it.
And at number 3 I have Majora's Mask.
Nice.
Original soundtrack.
Wait, me too. I think this is the first time this has happened.
Really?
Oh, maybe once or once or twice. But yeah.
Easy, agreeable pick then. And it's kind of funny because I see this soundtrack as well as just the game in general paired along with Ocarina of Time.
Yeah, definitely.
But I found this one to be a little bit more interesting. I'm not sure if it's because they were able to maybe like learn from sound on the Nintendo 64.
Okay.
Or maybe they just had like more thematically to go off of. Like, oh, there's darker imagery in this game. We can do like darker music sometimes. We can have moments that are a little more haunting, maybe like more emotive in that sense.
Yep.
And I just found there to be like a good amount of diversity just in general, which is something that with Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, the soundtracks would be taking that direction, right? And it's probably just like due to the evolution of the console. I would say, yeah, like that Nintendo 64 era, I'll say again, that's when we start getting like fuller instrumentation, like more diversity. Like this song is going to be more ambient. Oh, and then the song's going to be a lot more active and you could sing along to it.
Right. You actually just reminded me of a fun fact.
Okay, spill it.
I meant to say for the Legend of Zelda.
Please share now.
So the capabilities of the NES only allowed for 3 notes to be played at once. So that was another like factor that just made it harder and all the more impressive that it was created and sounds as good as it does. And I don't know if this was, I think this would have been, I don't know, maybe the SNES was a little better, but at least through the NES, like that sounds like so impossible to make music with only 3 notes at a time being like your maximum capabilities.
So when you say 3 notes at a time, does that mean each song can only have the range of 3 notes, or can you only
any second, any you could at one moment there could only be 3 notes.
So you can only play like a 3-note chord at most. You wouldn't be able to play
but then you can't have drums.
Oh, right,
or
okay.
Bass or like
Sure. And okay, so there's a lot of
it's like bass, drums, and whatever lead essentially.
That forces creativity a lot.
Exactly.
Absolutely. That sounds like making music on hard mode.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm guessing by Nintendo 64 area, well, there you go. They could use plenty of notes and
a huge step up.
And I'm sure Koji Kondo, when he was composing it, was like prepared,
took advantage,
had lots of ideas that he wasn't able to use before.
Right.
And they worked. I mean, that's how I see it for Majora's Mask. I would love to hear the score in the context of the games. I'm sure that it would it really adds to that atmosphere that the game goes for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, yeah. I will say, so you're making these comparisons between Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. Obviously, a fair comparison because these 2 games are so closely related. But to me, Majora's Mask always felt like so much more like, I don't know, like serious and like, I don't want to say like I don't know, polished, I guess. Like where Ocarina of Time felt more like childlike, like youthful per se. And I guess as preference, if you like, it would be hard to argue that something that's polished is worse than something that perhaps doesn't sound as polished. I mean, not to say Ocarina of Time didn't sound polished. I don't know if that's the right word, but it takes itself more seriously, I guess. It's the darkest game in the franchise, so it does have those really dark moments that Ocarina of Time probably didn't have as much of. So it does have a bit of more diversity, maybe, but I don't know. I mean, I don't want to spoil anything, but it's below Ocarina for me.
All right.
But okay, whatever. I'll keep going.
Well,
yeah.
With that, we could possibly take our break now. And then after the break,
keep talking.
Our listeners will see if you were telling the truth about Majora's Mask being your number 3.
Fair enough. You guys will have to sit on the edge of your seat for a minute or so.
All right, we'll be right back.
Hey, this is TC.
And this is Jim from the Studio Demands It podcast,
Where every episode we take a demand from a hypothetical studio,
which could be you,
and challenge ourselves to conceptualize, pitch, and craft a film based on the stipulations
or the demands
we are given. We talk about movies all the time. Particularly, we complain about the choices made in the films we've seen.
We're nerds like that.
And, of course, like any good nerd does, we automatically assume that we could do better.
Even with the demands and restrictions that clearly must have been put on by a production.
So head on over to studiodemandsit.com and listen to our previous library of episodes. Our library of previous episodes. Our precious library, Jim. Our library of precious episodes.
You're a pirate, Smeagol.
Okay, so head on over to studiodemandsit.com to listen to our library of episodes.
And submit your demand for a future episode, too.
So go do that.
Okay, bye.
Okay, end of ad.
Hi there, I'm David.
And I'm Kate.
And we're the hosts of another Zelda podcast.
There are so many good podcasts out there, and some of them in particular concern the Legend of Zelda.
That's right, Kate, and we are another one of them. That is actually the name of our show, Another
Yes.
Zelda podcast.
And in our show in particular, we talk about some of our favorite dungeons, characters, boss battles. We have top 10 lists.
Yeah, we do deep dives on game design and production aspects of the different Zelda games.
And we talk about our own experiences. We do some review episodes, talk about our challenges, our struggles, and our victories.
That's right. Really just almost anything that has to do with Zelda, we like to talk about it. A new episode comes out every other Friday, and you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, Google Play, and YouTube.
And you can also check out our episodes on our website, anotherzeldapodcast.com.
That's right. All right, we will see you there.
Okay, bye.
And we're back. And I am ready to hear Jake's number 3 pick for top 5 original soundtracks, Legend of Zelda.
Oh, hey guys. We were just talking about Majora's Mask. Am I right? Yeah, so okay. I was talking about these key differences between Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask. I think a big thing of Majora's Mask soundtrack is that Kondo really makes use of the space in music to create a feeling of eeriness and make you a little unsettled. So there's not just constant music, notes. Like he really makes use of the space between the notes, you know what I mean? And that like empty space could really contribute to a feeling of like uneasiness that obviously the game is going for. And I think the soundtrack did pretty well portraying. I mean, it is number 3 on my list, so I do like the soundtrack. I'll say that. I'm not trying to just dump it, but it has a lot of very sad sounding like string instruments for a lot of it, that also perhaps differentiates it from Ocarina of Time. But the way that like Skyward Sword felt very grandiose and I don't know, just this really huge orchestrated experience. The way Majora's Mask uses these strings is like the opposite.
More sparse.
It's very sparse, very subtle, and like I said, it just creates the feeling of darkness and uneasiness as you play the game. And it also makes it easier. I think I would think it would make it easier to switch between tracks in gameplay to have more space between notes. Because that's a thing about Zelda that I always really respect and admire as well. The way they like switch between tracks. And especially like you obviously see this in Breath of the Wild. There's the introduction of new instruments and notes and whatever as you move from space to space within the game. I think the way, I mean, it's not just Zelda, the way video games transition between tracks in general is pretty admirable, and especially when they pull it off very well, where you don't even notice, like you're not like, wait, that's a totally different track. Like in the earlier games, you walk in a different room and it just changes tracks, and it's very abrupt. Yeah, Majora's Mask does a very good job of connecting things, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say. It also has more playful tracks. It's not just the sad stuff. So you have like Clock Town themes, which are very catchy. That's it, right? I think it's that one.
You sang it well.
Thank you. Very catchy. And I played the game like 2 years ago, and I still remember it. Well, I just listened to it, I guess. That's cheap, but
Cheater.
But as soon as I heard it, it took me back. And this is one of my least favorite Zelda games, but I really dig that song, the soundtrack, I guess. There's also, I don't remember it offhand, but I wrote down, I don't know if I'm even saying it right, Guru's song, I guess was also a standout track. Besides that, they have some pretty cool, the way I remembered this game is that I did not like the way that Ocarina tracks, like when you play the tracks yourself as a character, I didn't like the way they sounded, how I remembered it at least. But then I listened to it. I literally wrote before I listened to the soundtrack, like, I don't like these Ocarina tracks, and then I scribbled it out. I'm showing Sam right now that I scribbled it. Because they're actually bangers. Like, I don't know what I was remembering.
Were you just frustrated playing the game?
Probably.
Yeah.
I didn't like the time aspect of this game. So I could have been frustrated. That could have been it. And you have to use these tracks so many times, so they probably, it got annoying probably. But no, they were actually bangers. I really like the Ocarina tracks. Besides that, there's they do take a lot, we already said, from Ocarina Time, so I do appreciate those like subtle callbacks. Like in the intro to Termina Field theme, there's like these flurries, is the best way I could describe it, of like I don't know, like chimes or maybe woodwind instruments. I'm not really sure what's going on, but those are taken like straight from Hyrule Field in Ocarina of Time, and that's like a cool like nostalgic throwback type thing. I don't really know. It was cool. I dug it. It has the main Zelda theme.
Always a good one.
Which another game doesn't. And that is my final contribution to this one.
Well, there you go. You guys are probably sick of hearing us talk about Majora's Mask now.
I sure am.
Yeah. No, you said it well. I mean, I would agree. I think you had more input from the game experience and maybe able to connect how things play out in the game.
Did you own this one, or did you borrow it from Dan?
I have it because like my brother gave it to me. I might have given it to you.
I think I
have it
from you. Yeah, please play it.
Okay. I'll play it then.
I don't
just like that.
You're lying.
Yeah. All right. Well, my number 2 pick is A Link to the Past.
Same.
A bit. Nuh-uh.
Me too.
Really?
Yes.
Wow. This has been a good one.
Wow.
You're a smart man for having that.
You too.
That's okay. This is the correct take. It's a little bit of a hot take having A Link to the Past this high.
I'm surprised because I thought we would have very different lists, and we don't.
Yeah, I think you're going to be tragically upset by my number 1 pick, and this is like the peak, and then we're going downhill right after this.
Oh, gosh.
But I'm enjoying the 3 and the 2s lining up.
Okay.
It's not. Yeah. All right. So A Link to the Past. It's really great. It's really catchy. I would say that they kind of like mastered the theme execution that they were doing.
That's me applauding because I wrote down the same exact thing.
Yes. Okay. Well, this might be boring for you guys to hear us say it twice, but I'll say it in a fun way, I guess. Yeah, they mastered the execution that they were going for in the past games. They're just like ultra catchy. They're very melodic, but still very simple. And I would imagine that the limitations from the Super Nintendo were probably similar to the NES, still upgraded, and you could see that there was like creativity was put into this, and I found it very charming and just very fun to listen to. I ended up listening to this a couple times, and it was cool. I mean, it makes me really want to play the game now. Do it.
It's like $5 on the DS. Like you can download it on the eStore.
So I'm a bit of a collector, if I haven't already said this.
You can find it like $10 on eBay. The
yes,
one with the box.
This is gonna break your heart that I can say this. I have a Super Nintendo and a physical copy of the cartridge.
Oh my gosh!
Yes.
Can we play this?
Yes, we can. And it's also on the Switch Virtual Console.
Oh, I didn't. Yeah, I did know that.
Yeah, so I have different ways of playing this. I probably should just bust out the Super Nintendo.
Yeah, you absolutely should. That sounds like an insane experience.
Yeah.
I'm wondering why I actually paid for it when I could have just played it on the Switch.
Yeah, you're a crazy person.
Maybe I just wanted to own it. I don't know.
That's fair. What media do you have that on?
The DS.
The DS.
Yeah.
Oh, DS. Okay.
Yeah, which is weird because like I definitely enjoy playing my Switch more than my DS, and you could also like do the Switch in handheld. So I don't know why I did that, but
you made a crucial error in your life. That's fine.
I really did.
Yep. But it's a short score, and it's it's a lot of like what we said for when we were talking about the first Legend of Zelda game, and when I even briefly brought up the second one. It's that idea they just made it better. I mean, it sounds crisper.
Right.
I'm sure you have some thoughts. So
yeah. Well, you just mentioned the second game, and I just want to say real quick.
Okay.
I don't know if I've said in this podcast in the past, but I originally played the second game for like 10 minutes and gave up on it because I thought it was dumb, and I just replayed it and I did a full 360. This game is actually awesome. That's all I have to say about that. It's not on my list or anything.
Thank you for saying that, Jake.
Just to set the record
It's still good
straight.
though, isn't it? The soundtrack.
The soundtrack, yeah, but it's not a whole lot different. It's just an in between from the first and this one. So it didn't need to be on the list. But I mean, you pretty much nailed it. All the reasons Legend of Zelda, the first game, is on my list, carry to this game. But even more so, like this game really, really, really like laid the bricks for the soundtracks to come in the franchise. Like these songs are reused so many times. Not like verbatim, obviously, but. This really defined what the Zelda music would be, especially because they had so much more capabilities than they did on the NES, and they could fit so much more music, like a greater length of music, so they could have more tracks and all that. Besides that, I pretty much said the same thing as you did in the beginning. This is like the Zelda theme that I think of like definitively as like, if I'm just like thinking of this theme in my head, I'm not like thinking of the version they have in Breath of the Wild. Like this is the version, I guess, with like the like 16-bit kind of sound. If that makes sense. I really just like adore this soundtrack. I think it doesn't, in the way I said, like Majora's Mask takes itself seriously. I don't think this one does as much. Sure. If that makes sense as well. The track I specifically called out on this one is the Dungeon of Shadows theme, which I thought was just straight up fantastic. And besides that, that was it. My last note was that it just laid the groundworks for Zelda games to come. That's pretty much what I have in this one. I'm surprised we shared it at number 2, but I'm happy awesome about that. All right, well, before I go into my number 1 pick, I'm so scared. I'm shaking. I've used my logic of deduction to find that neither of us had Breath of the Wild. Yeah, do you want to talk about that real quick? We should address that. Okay. Just clear the air. I'm going to adjust my mic real quick. It's been falling. Oh, that wasn't even loud. Nice. Okay. Nice. A little rumbly. You guys didn't hear. Oh, you did hear a little. It's okay. Yeah. Breath of the Wild. Yeah. What do you have to say about that? Because I definitely have some things to say. Right. So I don't know if this is a hot take or not. I mean, a lot of people
consider this to, Breath of the Wild to be the best game, like the best gaming experience for Legend of Zelda. And that's definitely valid. And playing the game, I thought, the score, the original soundtrack was just fine. And I didn't think there was any weirdness, and I didn't think any songs were annoying. I didn't really get sick of any of the music. And then when I listened to it outside of the context of the game, I was a bit bored by it, and I felt it was very inactive. And I don't like to be pessimistic on the episode, but it is kind of peculiar how how I'm not even including this on my list. But it's really just because I'm sure you're nodding your head, so I'm gonna think you're thinking the same thing.
Yeah,
it's a little bit of a passive experience, and really not much to be listened to on its own.
Yeah, on its own. Okay. I don't want to call it passive because I think this is the most active soundtrack Zelda's ever had in the context of the game.
Okay.
The way I was describing how songs blend into each other so you wouldn't even notice, like that's the key to like a good soundtrack in my opinion, nowadays at least, where we have the capabilities of doing this. The Breath of the Wild soundtrack, the game, this is like the first Zelda game that wasn't about the music by any means. The music was there to prop the game up, and it does a really good job of that. And I think the music is very active within the game, where you're getting all these audio cues to like, the sound. I mean, I can't like hum it offhand, but like when there's a guardian near you and it starts making the combat music.
Yeah.
So even if you don't see it, like you're freaking out and you're ready for combat mode. Even though you don't visually see whatever. So I think it's a very active soundtrack, and I don't think it is a soundtrack you'd want to listen to on its own. Like it's made for the game.
Sure.
100%. So I pretty much agree with a lot of what you said.
It's also about 6 hours long.
Yeah, that's another thing.
And it's because it's such a long game, it allows for so much music. It's on the Switch.
Yeah, I didn't even listen to it. I didn't know how long it was because I knew this wasn't on my list because it's not like what I just
Interesting.
said. Yeah.
So you just from playing the game, you were able to retroactive.
So I have, I think, 350 hours in this game.
Right. So you definitely did not need to listen to anything. I didn't need to
listen to 6 hours.
Yeah, that's fair.
But I will say, I think Kakarika Village, I really like the music, that one. Terrytown, I loved, and the Goron Village, or I think it's Goron Village. I really like I don't know if you could imagine it in your head, or if we're playing it right now in the editing, but I really like the vibes they give off. It felt very right with how they portray the Gorons in this game. So yeah, I do really like the music in that game, but it's not a Zelda music game by any means.
Sure. So we'll leave that as an honorable mention.
Definitely an honorable mention. I'm happy it's not on the list, and that I don't have to debate it with you.
Right, because that would have been a little upsetting for both of us. But without further ado, I'm going to go right into my number one pick.
God. Oh my gosh.
And it is obviously Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker. This was a masterpiece.
Sam,
listening to
you
it.
know how to grind my gears.
Yep. It was a particularly emotional soundtrack. I felt like it had like tons of diversity in the instrumentation that could be a result of it being the GameCube, and it's not just some kind of chiptune experience. Like it's able to make you cry with the instrumentation now, and they dip their toes into that. It borrows a little bit from like Celtic folk music, and it's kind of cool because like you feel like a Viking a bit. Like you feel like you're, sailing the seas, and you have like a crazy boat with some kind of Viking imagery, mythology face on it, and it feels very grand. It's 2.5 hours long, the one I listened to.
It's not too bad.
And yeah, not too bad. But even at 2.5 hours, it felt like a total breeze. Now, I might have said this at some point in one of our episodes. This was my favorite game from my childhood. It came out like right, when I was like in elementary school, I think it was, and had tons of time for video games, and this you can dump hours into this game, and I felt like maybe that played a part in it. Like I had more of an emotional, maybe nostalgic connection to the sounds from it. But it was a pleasure.
Yeah. I want to say this is proving my point of why we perhaps should have waited on this episode. That because you played this game, you felt emotionally connected, and it was your number one.
I think the music stands on its own as really great. I just would like to add because I haven't played this game in a while, but
it brings you back to those childhood memories.
I think more in a sense of I am familiar with the sounds. Like I did not feel alienated by the sounds that I was hearing.
Okay.
I don't remember the game well enough to hear like the dungeon theme and be like, oh, I remember when my life was simple and I just had to beat the dungeon. Like honestly, none of that really like triggered any kind of memories. At best, it did allow me to be like, oh yeah, like this doesn't sound weird to me hearing this kind of drum machine.
Right.
That type of familiarity.
To me, this soundtrack, and this goes for a lot of GameCube games, so I won't make it a fault of this game specifically, but it just felt very GameCube-y.
Okay.
Like I feel like the GameCube just had a very specific genre of games and music and art styles that like when you look at a GameCube game or hear a GameCube game, you know it's a GameCube game. That maybe other Nintendo games from other consoles don't share like those very specific characteristics as much.
Well, to be truthful, I cannot really relate to that sentiment at all. I'm trying to picture what the GameCube signature sound would be. I think if anything, maybe like the Nintendo, the NES era has that specific chiptune. Like that is all. Yeah, that is all you're gonna get.
That's definitely fair.
Yeah, and
the specific, I don't know if I could give you the specifics, but maybe the cartoony feel of the game. I don't know, really. Maybe it just feels like a GameCube game to me.
Like how the GameCube probably had more like lighthearted games. Like they were competing with maybe like the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox that had more adult-oriented games. Wind Waker was like a clear, all right, we're not Majora's Mask anymore. This isn't going to scare you. This is going to be cute. And the music is, while it's
cheery.
Yeah, it's going to be cheery. Yeah. It'll still be like well put together and it's not going to be jingles.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm not saying it's bad. It's just not on my list.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you know how I feel about this game. I do want to give it another go, and maybe that'll change my mind. Maybe if I play the game again, I'll change my mind.
So tell me this: what do you like better? Do you like Wind Waker soundtrack or the game? If you're able to compare it.
I can't really vouch for how familiar I am exactly with the soundtrack.
Okay.
But I mean, I do have an idea, and I would say I don't know if one is better than the other. To me, like this whole episode really it gets to a point where it's a little tricky to differentiate between the game and the music.
Okay,
and especially because of how much these games rely on the music.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, it wasn't the case with Breath of the Wild, but we just explained why. I don't know. I'm not doubting you, and I wish we had time to listen to some tracks from each of these as we went along.
So I could prove that I'm right and you're wrong, is basically why you're saying that.
A little bit. I want to be proven wrong by you that this is
a masterpiece.
The best soundtrack.
This, I would say, now, I don't want to upset anyone by saying this, but I believe this soundtrack to be the one masterpiece of these. They're all very good. This is the peak.
Okay, that is pushing the envelope.
That's how I do it.
All right, you want me to say my number one?
If I can bear it.
Ocarina of Time.
What a surprise.
Is unsurprisingly my number one, especially because I said earlier that it's on my list and I haven't said it yet. So.
And I was allowing Jake to believe that it wasn't going to be on my list at all for the past week.
Yeah, you know what? You told me that you're a silly person if you think this is the best Zelda soundtrack.
I was being a bit provocative, but more or less.
And that is why I went ahead and made an entire page of notes
God.
just for this one.
Oh God. All right.
Mind you guys,
Grab your popcorn.
I usually do 2 pages of notes per episode. Usually the first 3 things on one page and the last 2 choices on the other one. This one I have a whole page just for Ocarina of Time because it is the best. It's beautiful from the first second, and I hope it's playing right now so you guys know what I mean. It also shares that bit of fantasy feeling with it. Well, actually, this came before Skyward Sword, so I guess Skyward Sword probably took a little bit from Ocarina of Time, because Ocarina of Time, you start in like this Kakarika Forest or whatever, and it is this very fantasy feeling game, and right off the bat, the music matches perfectly with that, in my opinion. I don't think there's a single track on this soundtrack that I didn't like. I was gonna say I could just throw the song and listen to, but then actually I do that sometimes. Sometimes you're just in the mood for video game music, and Ocarina of Time is really just the go-to for me, I guess. Even small tracks like, can I read my... Inside a House is the name of one of the tracks when you, I guess, go into a house. Even these small tracks that are like for little things on the side, I think are like so whimsical and fun to listen to, and definitely catchy. I think every song in this soundtrack really is, well, not every, I mean the dungeons, it would be hard to say are catchy, but I think like these like side things and overworld themes and things like that, and the ocarina songs themselves are all like very catchy. Definitely the ocarina songs those were definitely stuck in my head like the whole time I played this game, especially because you use them so much and they're so simple and short and etc. Inside a House and then Shop is another one. The Shop track that brings back the memories. The Hyrule, I wrote as a note, Hyrule Field theme heart eyes emoji. This is just like one of the best Zelda tracks ever. It just, I mean, you do spend a decent amount of time in Hyrule Field, especially because it's so big and you have to like run around between the different like villages and whatnot. But it really, you don't mind spending so much time around it because it's a really fun track. Yeah, I said every single ocarina track was just really fun in this game, and it was so exciting to find these new songs to play in the ocarina, not only for the gameplay aspect, but to see how they would sound and how they would be portrayed in the game. And I'll say also, as simple as they are, I think they only use like 5 or 6 notes total. They do match very well what they're meant to do. So there's like Song of Storms and whatever, all these different tracks that do different things, and I think they sound how you would want them to sound, you know what I mean? Saria's song I wrote equals best track ? It's a absolute toe tapper. Cue Saria's song. I did write, okay, I don't like Lon Lon Ranch. Okay, Lon Lon Ranch is like a ranch in the middle of Hyrule Field, and I do not like that track.
Can you sing that track for us?
No, I can't, but if we're able to play it here. It had, I don't remember what exactly, but there was like a very obtrusive sound instrument in it that just sounded off and weird and didn't need, I don't know. We'll give it a listen after it's recording, because I'm kind of I'm failing to remember what it sounded like, but those were my notes. So I trust my previous self who wrote these notes.
I trust you too.
Music, yeah, I said the music fits each region so well. I kind of talked about that a little bit, but like Zora's Domain is like drowned in this reverb that like obviously in the music like realm you understand that reverb sounds quote unquote wet, right. But it really does, it fits the vibes of the water people, you know, that you're surrounded by. I also wrote that there in the market town outside Hyrule Castle, there is like a very upbeat, dancey song that's very fun as well. And in the game itself, there's like, literally people dancing, and it's just like crowd. It's like a city center essentially. So the songs really match up very well with the games themselves. And What else do you? Oh, okay. So Pitchfork occasionally will. I think like once a week, maybe every Sunday, they'll review like an album or a soundtrack or whatever that they haven't reviewed when they came out, but that they should have.
Yep, on Sundays.
So do you know what they gave Ocarina of Time?
No.
A 9 out of 10.
And that's pretty good for
insane.
Pitchfork. Like that's not many albums are higher than that. Is one way of saying it.
Yeah, not many. So I just want you, Sam, to be aware that this is not just my opinion that Ocarina of Time is number one.
Oh, I know that. I mean, I even addressed it earlier when I put it at number 5. Was I said this is probably like the album, if you want to call it that people discuss
according
the
to
most.
Pitchfork.
Pitchfork would agree that it's
9 out of 10.
It's a 9. Yeah,
that's pretty wild. Kakarika Village is very. I read it's very calming. It has a nice. It's like I said. What was it? I guess Skyward Sword. I said has like. What's it called? That's Skyloft. Why did I just forget? They have the Skyloft theme that's like very cozy and like you come back to it a lot. So Kakarika Village, you come back to a lot in this game, and it also has like a very comfortable, calming, nice little soundtrack that's a good resting spot for the gamer, I guess. It is pretty meta. There's this one bit in the game where there's a windmill operator in Kakarika Village that when you spoiler alert when you become adult Link, you come back to his shop and he is he literally like goes crazy like because he has this Song of Storms that you play in the Ocarina. It's stuck in his head and he goes like, oh, this kid 7 years ago played this song for me and I can't get it out of my head. It's been driving me crazy, la la la, whatever, and it like ruins his life because of how catchy it is. I'm sorry, I keep kicking the mic. It does not get like more meta than that because these songs are so catchy and really
that's
work.
awesome.
Yeah. Oh, and I wrote, okay, so this was actually Kondo's last full soundtrack he did just himself.
Okay.
So yeah, I guess that's just one more reason why it goes down as number one definitively. With no exceptions.
Sure. And it's also interesting. I looked up the Pitchfork article, and it looks like that is the only Koji Kondo score that was reviewed.
Right, yep.
So
they probably didn't do a lot of video game stuff back then, which I guess it's cool they went back to it.
Right. I'm guessing that Pitchfork at that age was still trying to develop a reputation, and they weren't really going to earn one by maybe talking about, popular Nintendo scores. But no, that's very cool that they treated it as, like a respectable piece of music, because that's what it is.
It's a cool article to read too if you have it's not too long if you have the time.
Oh, true. Yeah, I just pull up the Pitchfork score and just think about it for 2 seconds, and then forgot that they do a write up about it. No, but it's a good point. I would like to hear what they say.
Read it, all of it, right now.
I'm going to read it right now. Hopefully they don't take us down for doing that. All right, well that just about wraps it up. I think we're gonna have an easy time picking 2 and 3.
I hope so. A Link to the Past and Majora's Mask.
Right.
Can't argue with it.
And then of course Ocarina of Time is gonna make the list.
Number 1.
I had it at number 5. You had it at
it's a little silly.
Number 1.
I have it at 5.
It's gonna be difficult to argue really any other position than 1, I would say, admittedly.
That was easier than I thought.
But then in exchange, we're going to have to settle for one of my guys. And I'm going to have to try to convince you into getting Wind Waker on here, because it deserves to be. It is the masterpiece. I'll say it again.
What were your other 2?
Well, I had Twilight Princess HD at number 4.
Okay.
And I liked that. I thought it was great. I maybe felt more immediate connections with obviously the higher listed ones.
Okay.
Wind Waker would be one of them.
Yeah, what was the last one?
And then I had Ocarina of Time number 5.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah, we could do Wind Waker, but I don't really want Twilight Princess on here. I feel like it doesn't bring like enough original stuff to the table that the other games do. Or like, I don't know, nothing stood out to me. maybe when I play it'll change my mind.
What about this? Wind Waker number 4. Original Legend of Zelda number 5.
5, yeah. We could do that. We can definitely do that.
Do I hear an or in your voice, or is that it right there?
The or would be Wind Waker at 5. Legend of Zelda at 4, but I don't think you'll agree to that one.
And I wouldn't. All right, well, that wraps it up for the official top 5. We have Legend of Zelda 1 at number 5. We have The Wind Waker at number 4. Majora's Mask, number 3. A Link to the Past at number 2. And finally, Ocarina of Time, number 1.
Woot woot.
Woot woot. Jake, how can people get in contact with us and find us on Instagram?
Yeah, top 5 Nintendo number 5. This is going to be the same thing on Twitter. Top 5 Nintendo with the number 5. And I think maybe Facebook as well. You could email us. You could email us at top5nintendopod@gmail.com. So that's the number 5, but also has pod at the end. And then my personal Instagram is just my name at Jake Naroden. Sam, what is your handle?
And my personal handle is Sam__Ansa, ANSA.
Awesome. This was a fun one. I love me some Zelda.
That was a good one. I'm glad we finally got to talk about music. I was trying to sneak my way into getting a music-based one. Maybe we could do it again. And it also gives me more reasons to need to play these games that I've been putting off for a while.
Yeah.
So
wait, before you run us out,
sure.
If you guys want to hear other soundtrack episodes, let us know what franchises you want to hear about. Okay,
absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. Well, with that, thanks for listening.
Thanks, guys. Bye.